There was a time when some stores weren't just places to shop. Walking into a Kmart on a Saturday morning felt like the whole weekend had officially begun. Sears was where your family bought everything that was supposed to last forever. And Toys R Us. Toys R Us was where childhood actually lived. These places were part of growing up, part of weekends, part of family memories you didn't know you were making. You knew the smell when you walked in. You knew the music playing overhead. You knew exactly where your favorite section was. And back then, it felt impossible to imagine these places ever disappearing. Because they weren't just stores. They felt permanent. Then one by one, the lights went out. And some never came back. Before all of this, shopping was small. It was a butcher who knew your father's name. A hardware store where the owner climbed a ladder to get down the one bolt you needed. It was slow. It was local. It was limited. America was growing though. Families were moving out to the suburbs in waves, and those suburbs needed something the old downtown shops never could offer. Everything under one roof all at once. So the big stores came. They arrived like promises. Sears had already been a household name for decades, but by the early 1980s it wasn't just a store, it was a rite of passage. You bought your first bike there, your school clothes, maybe even your family's first color television. Kmart was younger, scrappier, everywhere. By 1980 there were over 2,000 Kmarts across the country, and for a lot of kids the blue light special wasn't just a marketing gimmick, it was an event. An announcement over the intercom that sent grown adults sprinting down aisles like it was a fire drill for bargains. And then there was Toys R Us. Founded on a simple, almost childish idea, that a store could be built entirely around joy. Aisles stacked to the ceiling. A giraffe named Jeffrey greeting you at the door. No adult supervision required to dream. This was the world before Amazon. Before overnight shipping. Before you could summon anything you wanted with a tap of your thumb. If you wanted it, you had to go get it. And going to get it, that was half the magic. By the mid-1980s, these stores weren't just surviving. They were thriving in a way that felt unstoppable. Sears was the largest retailer in America. Not a top retailer, the largest. Its catalog had once been called the consumer's Bible. And even as the print catalog began to fade, the stores themselves were cathedrals of American middle-class life. Refrigerators. Riding mowers. Craftsman tools that fathers passed down like heirlooms. Kmart, meanwhile, had figured out something powerful. Convenience wrapped in personality. Jaclyn Smith had her own clothing line there. Martha Stewart would later bring her name to the shelves. Kmart wasn't trying to be fancy. It was trying to be yours. And Toys R Us. Toys R Us understood children better than almost any company in American history. Every commercial ended the same way. That jingle, that promise, I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. And you believed it. You believed that store was built just for you. Christmas seasons at these stores weren't shopping trips. They were expeditions. Parents circling parking lots for a spot. Lines wrapping around registers. Kids clutching wish lists torn from the Sears catalog, dog-eared and underlined. This was the golden hour. Malls were being built around these anchor stores like solar systems orbiting a sun. If you had a Sears, a Kmart, and a Toys R Us within driving distance, you basically had everything a family in 1985 could ask for. If this brought back a memory you forgot you had, tell us about it in the comments below. What store did you lose that you still think about? And if you want to keep remembering with us, please share it with someone and subscribe to the Nostalgia Vault, because every decade deserves its story told. To understand why these stores mattered, you have to understand what America wanted to believe about itself in the 1980s. This was the decade of more. Bigger hair, bigger shoulder pads, bigger dreams. Reaganomics promised prosperity was just around the corner, and these stores were where that promise became physical. You could touch it. You could put it in a cart. These stores were the backdrop of 1,000 ordinary miracles. A mother stretching a paycheck to get school clothes that would last. A father finally affording the tool set he'd wanted for years. A kid getting one toy off the shelf instead of the catalog page. They were also social spaces. Teenagers loitered in the electronics section of Sears just to watch MTV play on a wall of televisions. Friends met at the Toys R Us video game aisle to argue about which console was better. Saturday morning at Kmart wasn't a chore, it was an outing. And the commercials became part of the culture itself. Jingles you didn't ask to memorize but somehow knew by heart forever. These weren't just advertisements. They were the soundtrack of an entire American childhood. For a moment, and it really did feel like it would last forever, these stores weren't just successful businesses. They were institutions. They were where you learned what it meant to want something, to wait for something, to earn something. Nobody in 1986 was worried about the future. Why would they be? The parking lots were full. The registers were ringing. The lights were always on. But permanence, it turns out, was never part of the deal. The first cracks were small. Category killers began to emerge. Specialty stores that did one thing better than the department giants did everything. Best Buy chipped away at electronics. Home Depot swallowed the hardware aisle whole. Then came the superstores. Walmart, quietly expanding out of small towns the big chains had overlooked, undercutting prices nobody thought could go any lower. Kmart tried to compete. It genuinely tried. But indecision, mismanagement, and one bad expansion after another slowly bled it dry. Sears held on longer than most, decades longer, clinging to a legacy that couldn't quite translate into a changing world. The catalog that once defined American consumerism became a symbol of something that no longer fit the moment. And Toys R Us. Toys R Us didn't lose to one competitor. It lost to 100 small cuts, big box stores selling toys at a loss just to get people through the door, and eventually, an online store that could put a toy on your doorstep before you even finished dreaming about it. In 2018, the last Toys R Us stores in America closed their doors. Grown adults, actual grown adults, cried in the aisles. Not because of a bankruptcy filing. Because of everything that bankruptcy filing erased. Sears has closed more than 90% of the stores it once had. Kmart, once holding over 2,000 locations, is down to a small handful. Some say as few as 3 still open in the entire country. The blue light will never flash again. Jeffrey the giraffe doesn't have a home to greet you in anymore. The Sears catalog that once told a nation what to dream about now exists mostly in memory and in boxes in someone's attic. Here's the thing nobody tells you about growing up. It's not just that you get older. It's that the world you grew up in quietly gets older too, and eventually, it disappears right along with your childhood. These weren't just stores. They were the places where your parents worked hard to give you something. Where your first toy was chosen. Where a Saturday felt like it belonged only to you. And somewhere out there, right now, there's an empty building with a faded outline on the brick where a sign used to hang. Nobody driving past it even notices anymore. But you notice, because you were there. And for a few minutes today you got to go back. If this brought back a memory you forgot you had, tell us about it in the comments below. What store did you lose that you still think about? And if you want to keep remembering with us, subscribe to the Nostalgia Vault, because every decade deserves its story told.